Imagine holding in your hands the power to rewrite your own story. Not just the future, but even the past that has shaped you. Most of us accept our memories as unchangeable facts, believing they define who we are. But what if I told you that your past is not a prison, but a canvas, one that you can repaint to create a brighter tomorrow? The truth is simple yet profound. Your imagination is the creative force of your life. Every thought you accept as real, every feeling you nurture within, is planting seeds for your future. The key is not in reacting to what is, but in assuming what can be. By adopting the state of already being the person you want to become, you begin to live from the end, and the world adjusts accordingly. Imagination as the creative force. Imagination is often dismissed as child's play, something useful for creativity, art, or storytelling, but not taken seriously as a tool for shaping real-world outcomes. Yet, if we look deeper, imagination is the very foundation upon which everything in human experience rests. Every invention, every structure, every great achievement began as an idea in the mind of someone who dared to picture something beyond what already existed. Airplanes, smartphones, music, cities, businesses, all were once invisible realities imagined before they became physical. The inner world of thought and vision is not separate from the outer world of action and matter. It is the origin of it. What you vividly imagine with key becomes the framework of your lived experience, whether you are aware of it or not. Consider how the mind functions in daily life. When you anticipate a meeting, you imagine how it will unfold. When you remember a conversation, you replay it in your mental theater. When you worry about the future, you create vivid scenarios that may never come to pass. These acts of imagination are not idle. They shape your emotions, your behavior, and ultimately your circumstances. If you imagine rejection, your body tenses, your words falter, and you unconsciously push others away. If you imagine success, your confidence grows, your posture strengthens, and you attract opportunities that align with that state. In other words, imagination is not passive. It is directive. It commands the subconscious mind, which then organizes your external world to mirror the inner picture. Think of the subconscious as fertile soil. Whatever seed you plant, whether it be fear, hope, doubt, or joy, will grow into tangible results. The conscious mind, through imagination, decides what to plant. Most people, however, do this unconsciously, allowing random thoughts, societal conditioning, or past experiences to dominate their mental pictures. They replay old failures, rehearse worst-case scenarios, and thus live in cycles that reinforce their limiting beliefs. The truth is, the imagination is always working. The question is whether it is working for you or against you. By taking charge of your imagination and directing it toward what you desire, you reclaim the creative power that has always been yours. This is not about daydreaming without purpose. It is about feeling the reality of your desire so fully that your mind accepts it as true. The combination of image and emotion is what impresses the subconscious. You cannot simply think of wealth, health, or love in abstract terms. You must feel as though it is already yours. Picture the scene of living in the home you desire. Hear the laughter of the loved ones you want around you. Feel the joy of the success you seek. When imagination is saturated with feeling, it ceases to be mere fantasy. It becomes a psychological fact. And facts of the mind, once accepted, harden into facts of the world. Science supports this principle in subtle ways. Studies in neuroscience show that the brain does not distinguish strongly between real experiences and vividly imagined ones. Athletes who visualize their performance in detail activate the same neural pathways as those who physically train. People who imagine practicing the piano improve their skills even without touching the keys. The body responds to the mind's pictures as though they were real, preparing it to act and shaping external behavior to align with inner expectation. This demonstrates that imagination is not a weak force. It is a directive one that influences biology, psychology, and destiny. But the greatest proof is personal experience. Reflect for a moment how many of your current circumstances were once imagined. The career you pursued, the relationships you entered, the opportunity you seized or missed. Most of these were preceded by mental pictures, assumptions, and expectations. Perhaps you imagined failure and attracted it. Perhaps you imagined success and achieved it. Either way, the process was the same. You created your reality in your imagination, whether consciously or unconsciously. Harnessing this consciously requires discipline, but not in the way most people think. It is not about forcing effort or battling the external world. Instead, it is about quietly retreating inward by constructing mental scenes that imply the fulfillment of your desires. It means dwelling not on how something will happen, but on what it feels like once it has happened. If you want freedom from financial struggle, picture yourself free. See the bills paid, the relief in your heart, the joy of giving generously. If you want love, imagine the warmth of being held, the sound of shared laughter, the comfort of belonging. By embodying the state of the wish fulfilled in imagination, you prepare the way for its appearance in the physical realm. Imagination as the creative redefine how we see obstacles. Challenges do not have to be confirmations of limitation. They can be raw material for new creations. When faced with a difficulty, the natural tendency is to dwell on it, to magnify it in the mind's eye, and thus to strengthen its grip. But if instead you imagine the solution, see yourself on the other side of the challenge, already victorious, you shift your inner state, and from that state, solutions, ideas, and opportunities begin to flow. The outer world bends to match the conviction of the inner. There is also a moral dimension to imagination. What you imagine for yourself, you inevitably project onto others. If you see the world as hostile, you meet hostility. If you see others as generous and kind, you evoke those qualities in them. Imagination, then, is not only a private act, but a creative force that shapes collective reality. By choosing to imagine peace, abundance, and unity, you contribute to the manifestation of those qualities in the larger human experience. To understand imagination as the creative force is to understand that you are never powerless. Even in the midst of circumstances that seem immovable, you hold the ability to shift your inner vision. That inner shift, once impressed with feeling, must eventually manifest outwardly. It is law as precise as gravity that what you vividly imagine with belief and emotion will harden into fact. The power of assumption, the foundation of transformation, rests not on wishing, hoping, or waiting for circumstances to change, but on the conscious act of assumption. To assume is not merely to think about a desire, but to embody the state of already having it. It is the practice of entering into the feeling of the wish fulfilled and allowing that state to govern your thoughts, emotions, and behave becomes your reality. When you live from assumption, you no longer ask whether your desire will come. You rest in the certainty that it already exists in the unseen and is unfolding into form. This is the power of assumption, the ability to set the course of your life by inhabiting the inner state of fulfillment before it is visible in the outer world. Most people live by the evidence of their senses. They look at their current conditions and draw conclusions about what is possible for them. If they see lack, they assume lack. If they see struggle, they assume struggle. And because their inner state matches what they observe, they perpetuate the same cycles, reinforcing old patterns again and again. The key to change lies in breaking this loop by refusing to be governed by appearances. Instead of reacting to what is, you deliberately assume what you desire as though it already were. You step into the reality of your choice, and your world eventually rearranges itself to match that assumption. Consider how this principle functions in daily life. If you assume you are confident, even before you feel it naturally, your body posture shifts, your tone of voice strengthens, and people begin to respond to you differently. If you assume you are prosperous, your refusals reflect abundance, not fear, and opportunities that align with wealth come into view. If you assume love surrounds you, you radiate warmth and others reflect it back. Assumption precedes experience, shaping how you think, feel, and act long before external proof appears. It is important to recognize that assumption is not wishful thinking. Wishing keeps desire at a distance, reinforcing the sense that you do not yet have what you want. Assumption dissolves that presence by placing you in the state of already having it. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you bypass the question of and move into the certainty of when. The subconscious mind accepts this certainty as fact, and from that acceptance, circumstances unfold to bring the inner reality into outward form. This principle can be illustrated through countless personal stories. Think of someone who desired a new career, but saw no immediate opportunity. By continuing to imagine themselves already in the role, feeling the satisfaction, hearing the congratulations, experiencing the pride, they carried themselves as though it were true. Eventually, the outer world presented the very chance they had inwardly assumed. Another person, longing for healing, refused to dwell on symptoms. Instead, they assumed the state of health, feeling gratitude for vitality, moving as if strength was already theirs. Over time, the body followed the mind, aligning with the assumption of wellness. These examples show that assumption is not dependent on visible evidence. It creates the evidence. The power of assumption also explains why limiting beliefs are so persistent. If you assume you are unlucky, unsuccessful, or unworthy, life continues to provide proof of those assumptions. The world mirrors back what you carry within. To change the outer reflection, you must change the inner assumption. It is not about fighting circumstances, but about replacing the mental state that gives rise to them. By assuming a new identity, you lay the foundation for a new reality. One of the most effective ways to practice this is through imaginal scenes. Instead of focusing on the steps that lead to your desire, you go directly to the end. Picture yourself already in possession of what you want and well in that scene until it feels natural. If your goal is financial freedom, imagine the relief of seeing a bank statement with abundance. If your desire is companionship, imagine yourself sharing joyful moments with someone who loves you deeply. If your wish is success, imagine hearing the words of praise or recognition you long for. The key is to saturate the imagination with sensory detail and emotion until the state feels real. Once it feels real inwardly, the subconscious begins to accept it as truth, and your outer life moves to align with that truth. This practice requires persistence. The old assumptions, shaped by years of experience and repetition, will try to reassert themselves. Doubt may arise, and appearances may contradict your inner vision. Yet the essence of assumption is faith. Faith not in blind hope, but in the creative power of your inner state. By returning again to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you train your mind to dwell in the reality of your choice rather than in the evidence of the senses. Over time, what once felt like imagination becomes your natural state, and what becomes natural within inevitably externalizes without. The beauty of assumption lies in its simplicity. You do not need to know how your desire will manifest, nor do you need to manipulate external factors. The how belongs to the unseen processes that respond to your inner conviction. Your only task is to assume the state of fulfillment and remain faithful to it, regardless of appearances. When you embody the feeling of already having what you desire, you align yourself with the reality in which it is true, and that reality must express itself in your life. Assumption also reveals that you are never a passive observer of life. You are its creator. Every state you assume, whether consciously or unconsciously, sets in motion the experiences you encounter. If you do not deliberately choose your assumptions, you live by default, governed by past conditioning and external influence. But when you consciously assume the states that reflect your highest desires, you step into authorship of your destiny. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances. Circumstances become the echo of your chosen inner reality. This is why assumption is so powerful. It is not about effort, struggle, or force. It is about surrendering to the inner state of already being the person you wish to be, already living the life you long for, already having the thing you desire, revising the past. Human beings often treat memory as though it were a permanent record, a fixed archive of events that cannot be altered. We replay the past as if it were carved in stone, allowing old experiences to define who we are and what we believe is possible for us. Yet modern psychology and ancient wisdom alike reveal that memory is not a static photograph, but a living, dynamic process. Each time you recall an event, you are not retrieving a perfect recording, but reconstructing it, influenced by your present state of mind. This means the past is not as rigid as it seems. By reimagining past events, you can dissolve their limiting influence, create new meanings, and open the path to different outcomes in the present and future. Think of how memories shape identity. If someone constantly recalls a failure, humiliation, or rejection, that memory becomes a filter through which they see themselves. They may say, "I am not good enough. I always fail," or "people never accept me," because they are living under the weight of past impressions. These self-concepts, born from memory, then dictate behavior and expectations, creating a cycle where the same types of negative experiences repeat. But if that same person revisits the memory in imagination and alters it, changing the script, re-seeing the event as though it had gone differently, they release themselves from its binding influence. They no longer carry the same emotional scar, and their present actions begin to align with the revised memory rather than the old one. This practice is known as revision, and it rests on the principle that the mind does not sharply distinguish between what actually happened and what is vividly imagined with feeling. Just as the body responds to imagines with real physiological changes, such as increased heartbeat during a frightening thought or relaxation during a peaceful daydream, so too does the subconscious accept revised memories as real experiences. When you deliberately rewrite a scene from your past, you impress upon your subconscious a new version of reality. Over time, this revised story becomes the one your psyche accepts, reshaping your beliefs, attitudes, and future manifestations. For example, imagine a child who grew up feeling neglected because a parent was often absent. As this memory may foster feelings of unworthiness or fear of abandonment. But through revision, that person can return to the memory in imagination, and rescripting instead of seeing an absent parent. They might visualize the parent offering love, support, and reassurance. By repeatedly dwelling in this revised version, the emotional weight of neglect begins to dissolve. The adult no longer identifies with abandonment, but with love, and relationships in the present begin to reflect this new inner assumption. Revision does not erase history in the literal sense, nor does it deny that certain events occurred. Rather, it transforms the meaning and emotional impact of those events. The mind's version of the past is never the event itself, but the interpretation of it. Two people may experience the same situation, yet carry completely different memories of it, shaped by how they perceived it. This demonstrates that memory is malleable, a story we continue to tell ourselves. By rewriting that story, we reclaim power over how the past influences the present. This technique can also be applied to seemingly minor events. Suppose you had a disagreement with a friend and left feeling misunderstood. By revising the scene in imagination, you can picture the conversation ending with harmony, mutual understanding, and affection. The next time you meet that friend, you may notice that the tension has dissolved, replaced by a sense of closeness. The revision not only changes your inner state, but also affects how others respond to you. As your new assumptions shape your interactions, one of the most remarkable aspects of revision is how it alters future outcomes. If you revise a memory of failed exam by imagining yourself answering competently and receiving a high grade, you begin to identify with success rather than failure. This new self-concept influences your study habits, confidence, and performance in future tests. The past no longer dictates limitation. It becomes fuel for empowerment. The subconscious accepts the revised scene as truth, and your outer life adjusts accordingly. Scientific studies support the idea that memory is not fixed. Neuroscience shows that each act of recall destabilizes a memory, making it malleable before it is saved again. This means every time you remember something, you have the opportunity to change it. Therapists use similar methods in trauma healing, where clients are guided to reimagine distressing events in ways that reduce emotional pain and foster resilience. What this reveals is that revising the past is not fantasy. It is a deliberate use of the brain's natural processes to create healing and transformation. Practicing revision requires intention and consistency. At the end of the day, you can reflect on any moment that felt unpleasant or limiting and re-script them in imagination. If someone criticized you, imagine them offering praise instead. If you made a mistake, see yourself acting with skill and confidence. If you felt overlooked, picture yourself being recognized and appreciated. By doing this regularly, you not only heal the past, but also cultivate an inner environment that aligns with your desired future. The more vividly and the revised memory, the more powerfully it imprints on the subconscious. Revision also teaches personal responsibility. It reminds you that you are not at the mercy of what has been, but that you hold the creative power to reinterpret and transform it. Rather than carrying wounds indefinitely, you can choose to reframe them in ways that empower you. This is not denial but mastery, the ability to direct imagination toward freedom rather than bondage. By changing the inner narrative, you break the chains of past conditioning and step into a life shaped not by what happened, but by what you have chosen to believe about it. In essence, the past exists only as memory, and memory is flexible. By reimagining past events, you dissolve their limiting influence, replace them with empowering interpretations, and create new outcomes that align with the life you truly desire living. From the end, most people live their lives chasing after goals as though the desired future lies far ahead, separated from them by distance, effort, and time. They set targets, make plans, and they hope one day they will arrive at the place where they can finally say, "I have made it." Yet this approach often produces endless striving, frustration, and delay because it keeps the goal in the future. Living from the end offers a radically different perspective. It means embodying the state of already having achieved what you desire, dwelling in the inner conviction that your wish is fulfilled, and allowing that state to guide your thoughts, actions, and experiences. Instead of reaching for your dream, you rest in the reality that it is already yours within, and life arranges itself to reflect that inner state. To understand this principle, consider the way imagination functions. Every night in dreams, you inhabit realities that feel completely real while you are within them. Your senses are engaged, your emotions are stirred, and your mind accepts the dream as truth until you awaken. Living from the end is like consciously choosing the dream of your fulfilled desire and holding it as your waking reality. You do not merely think about the goal as a possibility. You assume the identity of the one who already possesses it. You speak, feel, and act from that place of fulfillment, even if your outer circumstances have not yet caught up. This practice shifts the relationship between you and your goal. Instead of being the seeker, you become the possessor. Instead of striving to reach, you relax into being. For example, imagine someone who desires financial freedom. If they live in the mindset of lack, they constantly think about money as something they do not yet have, worrying about bills and chasing opportunities with fear. But if they live from the end of financial freedom, they carry the inner feeling of security, abundance, and ease. They make decisions not from desperation, but from confidence. This change in state affects behavior, perception, and opportunities, leading to outcomes that match the inner assumption. The same principle applies to relationships. If a person longs for love, but continues to see themselves as lonely or unworthy, they radiate that inner state and attract experiences that mirror it. But if they live from the end in love, feeling cherished, valued, and connected, they naturally express warmth and openness, which invites love into their life. The difference is not in forcing the external world, but in embodying the internal state that creates alignment with the desired reality. Living from the end does not mean pretending in a shallow sense or ignoring current conditions. It is not about deceiving yourself into believing something false. Instead, it is about recognizing that imagination is the seed of reality and choosing to dwell in the end state as if it were already accomplished. The subconscious accepts this inner state as fact, and from that acceptance, the outer world is compelled to shift. circumstances, people, and events begin to reorganize themselves to match the conviction held within. The effectiveness of this approach can be seen in countless examples. Athletes often visualize themselves crossing the finish line or holding the trophy long before the competition. By mentally living from the end of victory, they condition their minds and bodies to align with success. Entrepreneurs envision their businesses thriving, speaking with clients, and celebrating milestones before the company even exists. Artists imagine their works being appreciated and celebrated, and in living from that end, they create from a place of fulfillment rather than doubt. These examples is real that the state of already having what you desire generates the conditions for its manifestation. One of the most powerful aspects of living from the end is that it dissolves resistance. When you see your goal as something distant, you often fall into worry about how it will happen, when it will come, or whether you are capable. This creates tension, doubt, and frustration. But when you inhabit the state of already having achieved it, the questions of how and when lose their grip. You rest in the knowing that is already done, imagination. And the outer world must eventually reflect that truth. The energy of effort and struggle is replaced by the calm confidence of fulfillment. This does not mean passivity. Living from the end inspires action. But the actions flow naturally from the state of being. When you already feel like a successful author, you are inspired to write with passion rather than fear. When you already feel like a thriving entrepreneur, you move boldly and make decisions with clarity. When you already feel like a healthy, strong person, you naturally choose habits that align with vitality. The actions arise effortlessly because they are consistent with the identity you have assumed. Practicing this principle involves creating imaginal scenes that imply the fulfillment of your desire. You go beyond daydreaming about the process and instead picture the result. If your goal is to graduate, imagine yourself holding the diploma, hearing congratulations, and feeling the pride of accomplishment. If your goal is to travel, imagine yourself already in the destination, seeing the sights, feeling the climate, and enjoying the experience. The more vividly and emotionally you live at the end, the more your subconscious accepts it as true, and the more powerfully it influences your outer life. Living from the end also transforms how you experience the present. Rather than seeing current circumstances as obstacles, you see them as temporary appearances on the way to the inevitable outcome. If you are living from the end of being healthy, current symptoms lose their power to define you. You know they are dissolving because you already inhabit the state of wellness. If you are living from the end of success, setbacks are reinterpreted as steps in the unfolding process, not signs of failure. The end state becomes your anchor, providing stability regardless of appearances. At its core, living from the end is a declaration of identity. You are not someone striving to become. You are already the one who has. The moment you assume the state of fulfillment, you shift the entire trajectory of your life. Everything you do, everything you perceive, everything you attract is filtered through that inner reality. By embodying the end from the beginning, you bypass struggle, dissolve doubt, and align yourself with the creative power that turns imagination into fact. In the invisible, human beings are conditioned to place their trust in what can be seen, touched, and measured. We rely on evidence from the outer world to determine what is real and what is possible. Yet all that is visible began in the invisible, born from thought, imagination, and unseen forces before materializing into form. Faith in the invisible is the recognition that transformation originates within, and that the inner shift must be trusted long before it appears in physical reality. It is the willingness to believe in the unseen processes of life, to stand firm in conviction even when the senses suggest nothing has changed. True transformation is born in this unseen realm, and those who cultivate faith in it discover the creative power that shapes destiny. Consider the seed planted in soil. For days or weeks, nothing is visible above the surface. The casual observer may think nothing is happening, but beneath the ground an extraordinary transformation is unfolding. Roots are forming, energy is being directed, and growth is preparing to break through into the visible. If one were to give up after a week because no plant had appeared, the process would be destroyed. Faith in the invisible is the recognition that unseen growth precedes visible results, and that patience and conviction must sustain the period of apparent stillness. The same principle applies to inner transformation. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, or revise the past, or live from the end, the change is first established within the unseen realm of imagination and belief. Outward conditions may appear the same for a time, but the inner shift has already set forces into motion. Faith is required to sustain the conviction during this interval. To doubt because nothing has yet changed outwardly is to uproot the seed before it bears fruit. To trust the invisible is to allow the process to unfold naturally, confident that what is eventually hardened into fact without. Faith in the invisible is not blind belief. It is not about ignoring reality or pretending that circumstances do not exist. Rather, it is about understanding the deeper laws of creation, that the unseen shapes the seen, that the inner determines the outer, and that the invisible precedes the visible. When you grasp this principle, you recognize that the absence of immediate physical proof does not mean the process is not working. In fact, the period of invisibility is often the most important stage, where the unseen alignment is taking place to bring your desire into manifestation. History is full of examples of individuals who trusted the invisible before the world offered any evidence. Inventors, artists, leaders, and pioneers often carry visions that no one else could see. They believed in possibilities beyond the current conditions. The Wright brothers imagined flight when heavier than air machines were considered impossible. Great musicians composed symphonies long before they were performed. Innovators designed technologies that seemed absurd until they became everyday realities. In every case, faith in the invisible upon which the visible was built. Without that trust, the unseen vision would have died in the womb of imagination. On a personal level, faith in the invisible is often tested, most during times of challenge. When the outer world appears contrary to your desire, when conditions seem unchanged despite your inner work, faith is what sustains you. It is the choice to remain loyal to the unseen vision rather than surrender to appearances. If you desire health, faith means holding to the inner conviction of wellness even while symptoms persist. If you desire abundance, faith means embodying the state of prosperity even when the bank account looks empty. If you desire love, faith means feeling cherished and fit even before the relationship appears. By trusting the invisible, you allow the unseen shift to complete itself and bring forth its visible counterpart. This principle is supported by the workings of the subconscious mind. The subconscious does not distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is physically experienced. When you dwell in an inner state with feeling, the subconscious accepts it as real, and from that acceptance it shapes behavior, perception, and circumstances. The results may not be immediate, but they are inevitable if faith is sustained. To waver to doubt, to constantly check the outer world for proof, is to interrupt the process. To remain steady in conviction is to allow the subconscious to do its work until the invisible becomes visible. Faith in the invisible also cultivates a deeper sense of peace. Instead of being tossed about by appearances, you learn to rest in the assurance of the unseen reality. Outer conditions lose their power to dictate your state because you know they are temporary reflections, subject to change. The true foundation of your life becomes the inner world, which you can shape and sustain regardless of circumstances. From this place of peace, you act with clarity, confidence, and calm, knowing that the outer will inevitably catch up to the inner. Practicing faith in the invisible can be strengthened through daily exercises of imagination and affirmation. By repeatedly returning to the feeling of your desire fulfilled, you train your mind to dwell in the unseen reality rather than in appearances. By affirming that your inner shift is real, even when the senses deny it, you deepen your conviction. Each act of faith reinforces the unseen process, until what was once invisible becomes natural, and what was natural within becomes fact without. Faith in the invisible ultimate reveals that life is not random or chaotic. It demonstrates that the universe operates on laws of correspondence, where the inner world and outer world are mirrors of one another. By trusting the unseen shift, you align yourself with these laws rather than resisting them. You come to see that transformation is not a matter, but of holding steadfast to the inner vision until the outer world reflects its personal responsibility. Every individual carries within themselves a profound, often overlooked, the ability to shape life through inner dialogue, beliefs, and assumptions. To embrace personal responsibility is to recognize that you are not a passive character at the mercy of circumstances, but the author of your story. By mastering the thoughts you entertain, the words you repeat silently to yourself, and the assumptions you hold about who you are and what is possible, you reshape the trajectory of your destiny. This responsibility may feel weighty at first, but it is also liberating, for it places the pen of creation back into your own hands. Much of human suffering arises from the belief that life happens to us. People blame parents, society, partners, bosses, or luck for their struggles. While these external factors certainly play roles in shaping experiences, the deeper truth is that it is the inner response, the dialogue you carry within, that determines whether those experiences imprison or empower you. Two people may endure similar hardships, yet one emerges stronger and hopeful, while the other remains bitter and defeated. The difference lies not in the events themselves, but in the meanings assigned through inner dialogue and assumption. Inner dialogue is the constant stream of words and images flowing through the mind. It is the quiet voice that narrates every situation, often so habitual that it goes unnoticed. This voice may tell you, "I always fail, no one respects me, I am unlucky," or it may affirm, "I am capable, I am loved, everything works out for me." Whichever dialogue dominates becomes the foundation of your reality. The subconscious mind accepts these repeated statements as truth, and from them it shapes perception, behavior, and circumstance. If you allow negative assumptions to dominate, life reflects them back. If you consciously choose empowering dialogue, life begins to mirror that empowerment. Assumptions are the silent agreements you make with yourself about what is possible. When you assume you are unworthy of success, you unconsciously sabotage opportunities. When you assume abundance is your natural state, you act with confidence and draw prosperity. These assumptions are like the operating system of your mind, silently running in the background, directing your choices and shaping your experiences. By taking personal responsibility, you become aware of these hidden assumptions and replace those that limit you with ones that align with the destiny you desire. Personal responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for everything that has happened in the past. It is not about guilt or shame. Rather, it is about recognizing that in this moment, right now, you hold the power to reinterpret your past, redirect your present, and reshape your future. Every thought is a slice, every assumption is a seed, and every word of inner dialogue plants the foundation of your tomorrow. You may not control the actions of others, but you can always choose how you perceive them, how you interpret them, and how you respond. That choice is where your power lies. One of the clearest demonstrations of personal responsibility can be found in the lives of those who have overcome extreme adversity. People who faced poverty, illness, or discrimination, or refused to accept those conditions as their permanent identity often rose to extraordinary heights. Their outer circumstances did not dictate their destiny because they mastered their inner dialogue. They assumed themselves to be greater than their conditions, and life eventually reflected that assumption. What distinguished them was not privilege or luck, but responsibility, the willingness to govern their inner world. Taking responsibility also means becoming conscious of the stories you repeat about yourself. Many carry childhood wounds or past disappointments into every new chapter of life. They identify with being the one who was abandoned, the one who was betrayed, the one who always loses. These stories perpetuate the past into the present. Yet through personal responsibility, You can revise these stories, choose new assumptions, and create new narratives. Instead of I am the one who is abandoned, you can affirm I am the one who is deeply loved. Instead of I always lose, you can affirm everything I touch prospers. The new story becomes the new script, and life begins to act it out. Mastering inner dialogue requires awareness and discipline. It begins by observing the words you silently repeat each day. When you catch yourself saying something limiting, you interrupt it and replace it with a statement that affirms the reality you wish to create. This is not about ignoring challenges, but about choosing the inner response that empowers you to rise above them. Over time, this conscious direction reprograms the subconscious mind, and the new dialogue becomes natural. Similarly, mastering assumptions means daring to believe in possibilities beyond current evidence. If you assume only what your senses confirm, you remain trapped in cycles of repetition. But if you assume greater possibilities, even when the outer world denies them, you open the door to new realities. Assumptions are not passive, they are generative. When you assume success, your actions align with it, your energy radiates it, and people respond to you accordingly. The assumption becomes self-fulfilling because it shapes the very fabric of your experience. Personal responsibility also invites you to release the habit of blame. When you stop blaming others for your circumstances, you reclaim your power. Blame keeps you tethered to victimhood, but responsibility frees you to create. This does not mean excusing harmful behavior from others. It means refusing to let their actions define your destiny. You may not have chosen every event in your life, but you can always choose how you interpret and use them. That choice is the essence of authorship. Ultimately, personal responsibility is empowerment. It is the realization that no matter what has been, you are not bound by it. You can write new chapters at any moment by mastering your inner dialogue and assumptions. Every thought is a brushstroke on the canvas of your life. Every belief a building block of your destiny. Every assumption a seed planted in the soil of tomorrow. When you accept this responsibility, you cease to live by default and you cease to live by design. You move from being the passive character in your story to being the conscious author, shaping a destiny aligned with your highest vision.